7:38, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on into the program. James Carafano, foreign policy analyst with the Heritage Foundation. Always great to have you on, James. And so this is the headline. Going to ask you that you put all this in perspective for us. One killed, one injured in a Hezbollah shelling in Nariya, Israel. Now, you and I have spoken before. Most people know what's going on. Is this the start of the bigger conflict that we've all been thinking is going to happen? Or is this just sort of, Hezbollah saying, okay, this is what we're going to do right now, and please don't bomb us back?
Right. So, look, I don't know. I can tell you what's sensible, but people don't always do what's sensible. So there's three, if you're Hezbollah or Iran, there's three big problems you have to think about. One is not American diplomacy, because that's just crap. We don't worry about that. But the Americans have made a huge deployment of air and sea forces to the theater. That's got to get your attention, because we don't know what's called back channels. So back channels are kind of, like in school when somebody would talk to somebody and they talk to your girlfriend, right? They're basically quiet behind the scenes communications through third parties, which send messages which don't get made in public, which is just, look, this is what we're really going to do. So we don't know if that's an issue. The second one is the Israelis have very clearly signaled that they're not interested in an all-out war. They did a very surgical, very strategic, very proportional response, and they've done that consistently. So the Israelis are saying, dude, we don't want to fight. And here's the problem, the big problem if you're Hezbollah or Iran. If you're Hezbollah, if you were going to attack Israel, the time to do that was when they were bogged down in Gaza. The problem now is, you can do damage to the Israelis, but Lebanon is an incredibly fragile state that's going to collapse in a nanosecond if they get drawn into an all-out war. That is really going to make a bad day for you. And if you want Lebanon to look like Gaza, perfect time to do that. If you're Iran, the problem is you can't have a war with Israel. There's countries in between. You can lob missiles at them and do a lot of damage, but we already know the Israeli society is actually quite resilient. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, when that war starts, the Israelis are going to take out your command and control to run the country. They're going to take out your infrastructure, your electrical grid, your oil exports, and they're going to go after your nuclear sites. Do you want to do that? And the war is going to lead to nowhere, right? And nobody's going to win, nobody's going to lose. So so it's not a free lunch for Hezbollah or the Iranians. And I just think that's something they got to think about.
So if you're Israel, because what was reported was a drone swarm. I don't know how many drones that is, but if you're Israel, now you have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to proportionally attack Hezbollah in Lebanon, or if you're going to try to go after Iran, because everybody knows that Iran is behind all of this.
Yeah, Golda Meir said, Israel can never start a war, right? And that's kind of the strategic culture of the Israelis, which is they absorb the first punch and then they basically go jihad on you.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that the Israelis can be seen to be preemptively starting a larger war. They face this. Look, the U.S. has their back, but we also have an administration that really doesn't want to have their back. Half their political party is rooting for the Palestinians. They're rooting for the people in the streets of UK beating up beating up people in the UK. So the U.S. wants to be seen as a kind of a thing, but the U.S. has to have your back. But if you're seen as the aggressor here, and look at October 7th. They had an attack that was bigger than 9/11 from their perspective. What did we do on 9/11? We invaded two countries.
Yeah.
And look at the criticism Israel has gotten. So I think Israel has a difficult time kind of preemptively leading the war.
Talk about the allies, because I've always found that interesting, because, Iran, a lot of these other nations not real happy with Iran, not real happy with the terrorism. and you've got Israel, who is, in my opinion, the victim in all of this. Talk about the allies that Israel has in the region. I mean, are they able to count on the allies at all?
Well, they already have, right? We already saw one armada of missile strikes at Israel in which other countries participated in shooting down the missiles. Yep. And the Iranians actually just said, look, if you shoot down our missiles that we shoot at Israel, we will attack you, which I think is a pretty fatuous claim. But they've already, in a sense, the last thing anybody wants is Iran to take over the region. I don't think anybody, I think they've all baked in the Arab Street. Like the Arab Street's going to be angry. I think that's all cooked in. Nobody's worried about the Arab Street. But here's what they would like to happen. They would like for Israel and Iran to come to blows, and for the Israelis to cripple the Iranian regime. And they'll all stand there. It's not like the Olympics, right, where everybody gets out with their flags and cheers USA. They'll all go in the closet, close the door, and go, yes, go Israel, go, right? Because they'd all like to see Iran taken down a peg or two.
Interesting. But you think Israel, I mean, will they do it? And you've already laid out why Israel doesn't want to do that. So it's almost like Iran keeps doing what they're doing. Israel at some point, because everyone knows that Iran is funding Hamas and Hezbollah. At one point, does Israel just say, okay, it's, death by a thousand cuts, right? At some point, Israel's going to be like, enough is enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the problem is, and remember, the Israeli government's in a very precarious state, right? I mean, all Israelis want to be protected. The government's not popular, but, and the government can't be seen to be weak, but it can't be seen to be overly aggressive. So Israel doesn't have kind of complete freedom of action either here, but the problem with the 1,000 cuts strategy is the Israelis can cut a lot deeper, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can take out a soccer field full of kids, and they kill your leader. I mean, you want to play how long you want to play that game,
right?
So, and the other thing is remember, in this part of the world, honor is about, and it's cultural. It's not my fault. I didn't make this stuff up, but. We think an honorable person is somebody who does nice things. And the culture of the Middle East, has always been honor is about power. You are an honorable person if you are respected and feared by your enemies because of how much power you have. So when somebody slaps you and you don't slap back, you look weak. And that's a problem. And there's two ways to deal with it, right? One is to slap back again. The other is don't slap the guy in the first place. So if Iran wants to look strong, it can bluster and do all that stuff, but people see through that in the region. The blustering and, we'll get you, but so again, tit for tat, that's not an easy strategy either for the Iranians.
Yeah, this is there. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this. This was Kamala Harris a few years ago.
For the commander-in-chief to suggest that we have to build a wall across our southern border because there are terrorists who are trying to invade the country, it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Well, James Carafano, of course, that audio bite obviously not aging well. And now part of that story is Biden-Harris had 250 people on the terrorist watch list that were encountered by Border Patrol. 99 were let into our country. So that's number one. And number two, with the parole program, we just found out that there was all kinds of fraud involved in that. And so the people that were sponsoring these folks being flown in from other countries, well, it turns out, some of these folks were, had phone numbers of dead people. They had they had addresses that were, storage facilities, that kind of thing. So this immigration policy, if that's what you want to call it, from Biden and Harris, just not working out real well, obviously.
So I think two things one that ties in with your last story, which is, if you're Iran or other countries and you want to hurt America right now and create chaos and everything else, you want to do it in a way that you don't have to overtly put your fingerprints on it. Because particularly with this administration, if you're not caught with your hand in the cookie jar, they have a difficult time justifying kind of taking response to it. So if I were Iran, it's like, hey, get a terrorist team over here and create a terrorist attack and create chaos inside the United States. So, and we've been vulnerable to that for 3 years. And you can say, well, it's something that can happen, because we've seen all kinds of incidents actually happen inside the United States that were actually terrorist related. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is clearly, and I'm not a political guy, not a Republican, not a Democrat. Clearly, Harris sees this as the greatest vulnerability for her election chances. She is completely vulnerable on this issue. There's no defense. So part of the defense is, well, we just need a mass amnesty. That'll fix the problem. We all know that won't fix the problem. The nation has never accepted the idea of a mass amnesty, Republican or Democrat presidents or Congresses. So that's kind of a sop to the left. And then what she's really been doing essentially is denying that she has any responsibility for any of this. And she wasn't the border czar. She didn't run these policies. And the whole idea is, don't worry, when I'm president, things will be better somehow, right? That's their plan. But the reality is, it's funny how they always said Biden-Harris until now she's running for president. Now they don't talk about Harris at all.
Right.
They just, but the reality is she was all in for all of these policies for every minute she was vice president of the United States. So somehow thinking that magically her and her team would have different border policies than the last administration, which has done nothing for 3 years except double the illegal population in the United States, and now running into the election trying to somehow pretend that they're getting this thing under control and that they discovered problems that need to be fixed. We'll see if it sells, because it is just gaslighting.
How worried, and I've only got 30 seconds left. Great analysis as always. How worried are you that you go to her website, her campaign website, and there's no policy issues there?
I think it's very predictable. I mean, Obama was going to be the savior of America. Joe, kindly Uncle Joe ran from the basement. The idea is to basically spin her as a moderate, have her do as little as possible, and then hope they win the election. And again, that's not a political comment. That's just
nope. You're right.
It's obviously what the strategy is.
You're right. All right, James, it's always great to have you on, and looking forward to having you on again. It is 7:52 on Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Super Text line is open at 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN at 7:52. Dan Mandis here